They think karma is slow. They think it forgets. They think they escaped. But karma doesn't chase them. It waits. It waits until they feel safe, until they feel powerful, until they think they've won. Then it strikes, not loudly, but precisely. What if the things destroying their life right now are not accidents, but echoes of their past choices? Listen carefully, because karma never misses. It only delays. Here are 15 brutal ways karma hits back, not to destroy them, but to awaken them. 1. Betrayal. Those who betray are betrayed in unexpected ways. You never thought it would be them, the person you trusted, the one who knew your secrets, the one who promised loyalty. Betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. It often comes from people who once stood closest to you. In today's world, betrayal feels more common than ever. Friends compete silently. Partners hide truths. People switch sides when it benefits them. And when betrayal happens, it cuts deeper than anger. It shatters trust. You start questioning everything. Was any of it real? Can I trust anyone again? But here is the truth most people ignore. Those who betray others are never at peace. They may win in the moment. They may gain advantage, status, or attention. But betrayal plants a seed that always grows back toward them. The problem is that betrayal doesn't just destroy relationships, it destroys character. When someone chooses deception over honesty, they slowly lose something priceless: integrity. And without integrity, every relationship becomes fragile, every success becomes empty, and every connection becomes temporary. Yet betrayal is also a mirror. It reveals who people truly are. It exposes hidden intentions. It forces clarity where illusions once lived. The solution is not revenge. The solution is wisdom. You learn to trust with awareness, not blindness. You choose boundaries instead of bitterness. You value loyalty not as a promise, but as a pattern of actions. And most importantly, you refuse to become what hurt you. Hope appears when you realize that betrayal did not break you. It awakened you. It sharpened your judgment. It strengthened your emotional intelligence. It taught you that loyalty is rare, but real. In time, you understand something powerful. Those who betray lose trust, but those who endure betrayal gain clarity. And clarity is the beginning of strength. Because in the end, betrayal doesn't destroy the faithful. It exposes the unfaithful, and you walk away wiser, stronger, and harder to deceive again. 2. Emptiness after success. Achievements without integrity feel hollow. They finally reached what they dreamed of: the promotion, the money, the recognition. From the outside, it looks like victory, but inside, something feels wrong. They wake up with everything they wanted and still feel empty. In today's world, success is measured by numbers: followers, income, status, influence. People are taught to chase results at any cost. So they sacrifice values, relationships, and honesty just to win. And they do win. But the problem appears after the applause fades. Silence. No real fulfillment. No deep connection. No sense of meaning. They realize that success built on shortcuts, lies, or ego has no soul. It looks powerful, but it feels fragile. Every achievement becomes something to defend, not enjoy. Every victory becomes something to fear losing. The truth is painful. When integrity is missing, success becomes a burden instead of a blessing. But emptiness is not punishment. It is a signal. It is life whispering, "You were meant for more than this." The solution is not abandoning success. It is redefining it. They begin to ask different questions. Am I proud of how I got here? Does my success align with my values? Who did I become to achieve this? Slowly, they rebuild. They choose honesty over shortcuts. They choose purpose over ego. They choose meaning over applause. And something changes. Success stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like identity. Hope appears when they understand that it is never too late to realign. They can still succeed with integrity. They can still rise without losing themselves. They can still win without betraying their values. Because real success is not just reaching the top. It is being able to stand there without feeling empty. And when integrity and achievement finally meet, success stops being hollow and starts being whole. 3. Regret, delayed remorse, is sharper than immediate pain. They thought they had time to apologize, time to change, time to chase what truly mattered, so they postponed it. They ignored the message. They stayed in the wrong job. They kept silent when they should have spoken. At first, it felt easier. Avoiding pain always does. But years later, the pain returned, not as fear, not as struggle, but as regret. In today's world, delay is normalized. People are taught to wait for the right moment, to stay comfortable, to avoid uncomfortable conversations. The problem is simple and brutal. Comfort today often becomes suffering tomorrow. They realize it too late. The person they loved moved on. The opportunity disappeared. The dream faded into memory, and regret hits harder than failure. Failure hurts once. Regret hurts every time they remember what they didn't do. But regret is not the end. It is a wake-up call. It exposes what truly matters. It reveals the cost of hesitation. It forces honesty. The solution is courage in the present. Instead of waiting, they act. Instead of suppressing truth, they speak. Instead of postponing dreams, they start. They learn that pain faced early is lighter than regret carried forever. One honest conversation can heal years of silence. One bold decision can rewrite a stagnant life. One small step can break the cycle of delay. Hope appears when they realize something powerful. The past cannot be changed, but the future is still theirs. Regret becomes fuel instead of chains. Memory becomes motivation instead of punishment. And one day, they understand. It was not the mistakes that haunted them most. It was the chances they never took. So they stop waiting. They stop delaying. They choose action over comfort, because immediate pain fades. But delayed remorse lasts forever, unless they decide to change today. 4. Self-sabotage. Inner guilt becomes external failure. They don't always fail because they lack talent. Sometimes they fail because deep inside, they don't believe they deserve success. So when opportunities appear, they hesitate. When progress begins, they slow down. When success is within reach, they make choices that destroy it. From the outside, it looks like bad luck. But inside, it is self-sabotage. In today's world, pressure is everywhere. People are expected to be perfect, productive, and confident. But behind the curated posts and confident smiles, many carry silent guilt. I'm not good enough. I'll mess this up anyway. Success isn't for people like me. The problem is invisible but powerful. Unhealed guilt turns into fear. Fear turns into hesitation. Hesitation turns into failure. They postpone decisions. They overthink simple moves. They abandon goals right before breakthroughs. Not because they can't win, but because winning feels unfamiliar. Yet self-sabotage is not destiny. It is a signal that something inside needs healing, not punishment. The solution begins with awareness. They stop blaming the world and start questioning their patterns. They ask, why do I always quit when things start working? They replace harsh self-judgment with honest reflection. Instead of saying, I always fail, they say, I am learning. Instead of running from success, they allow themselves to grow into it. Small changes create massive shifts. One brave decision. One unfinished goal completed. One moment of self-compassion. Hope appears when they realize that failure was never their true enemy. Their own beliefs were, and beliefs can be rewritten. Slowly, they stop sabotaging themselves. They start trusting their potential. They start acting like someone who deserves success. Because the moment they release inner guilt, external failure loses its power, and when they finally choose themselves, they discover something life-changing. They were never broken. They were just afraid to believe in their own worth. 5. Mirror encounters. You meet people who treat you exactly how you treated others. They never thought it would feel like this. The cold replies, the indifference, the feeling of being ignored, misunderstood, or taken for granted. Suddenly, they are on the other side. In today's world, it's easy to hurt people without realizing it. Ghosting becomes normal. Harsh words are typed without thinking. Promises are broken casually. They once thought, it's not a big deal. But now, they feel the weight of it. The problem is simple but painful. How you treat others eventually becomes how life treats you. Mirror encounters are not coincidences. They are reflections. When someone dismisses them, they remember how they once dismissed someone else. When someone walks away without explanation, they remember the times they did the same. And that realization hurts more than any argument. But mirror encounters are not punishment. They are lessons. They expose blind spots in character. They reveal emotional habits people never questioned. They force empathy where there was once indifference. The solution begins with awareness. Instead of blaming others, they pause and ask, have I ever made someone feel like this? Instead of reacting with anger, they respond with humility. Instead of repeating old patterns, they choose to break them. They learn to listen instead of dismiss, to explain instead of disappearing, to respect instead of using. Small changes create powerful shifts. One sincere apology, one honest conversation, one decision to treat people with dignity. Hope appears when they realize something profound. If behavior created the reflection, behavior can change it. Mirror encounters become turning points, moments where they stop repeating cycles and start evolving. And one day, they notice something different. People treat them with respect. Conversations feel genuine. Relationships feel real. Not because the world changed, but because they did. Because when you change how you treat others, life changes how it treats you. And the mirror no longer shows your past mistakes. It reflects your growth. 6. Isolation. Those who use people eventually lose them. At first, they didn't notice it. People were always around. Friends answered their calls. Connections opened doors. They thought it would always be that way. So they started treating people like tools, useful when needed, invisible when not. In today's world, this behavior is common. Networking replaces friendship. Clout replaces loyalty. Convenience replaces sincerity. The problem is subtle but brutal. When people feel used, they quietly disappear. No dramatic arguments, no loud confrontations. Just distance, messages unanswered, invitations declined, support slowly withdrawn. And one day, they realize something terrifying. They are alone, not because they lacked talent, not because they failed, but because they never valued people beyond their usefulness. Isolation is not sudden. It is built through small acts of selfishness. But isolation is not just punishment. It is revelation. It reveals that relationships are not transactions. It exposes the emptiness of success without connection. It forces them to confront their own behavior. The solution begins with humility. They stop asking, "What can I gain?" and start asking, "What can I give?" They learn to listen without agenda, to support without expecting returns, to respect people even when they offer nothing in return. They apologize where they once exploited. They rebuild trust where they once destroyed it. It's not easy. Some people will never come back. Some bridges cannot be rebuilt. But growth is not about fixing the past. It is about changing the future. Hope appears when they realize something powerful. Real connection is still possible when they treat people as humans, not resources. Relationships begin to feel real again. Slowly, isolation fades. Conversations deepen. Trust returns. Loneliness transforms into belonging. And one day, they understand. Using people creates emptiness. Valuing people creates meaning. Because in the end, success without people is loneliness. But respect for people creates a life worth living. 7. Loss of respect. Words spoken carelessly. Return as silence from others. They didn't mean to hurt anyone. It was just a joke. Just honesty. Just something said in the heat of the moment. But words have weight. In today's world, people speak faster than they think. Comments are typed instantly. Opinions are shared without reflection. Harsh truths are delivered without compassion. The problem is that careless words don't disappear. They linger in people's minds. At first, nothing seems wrong. People still smile. Conversations continue. But slowly, something changes. Replies become shorter. Invitations stop coming. Trust begins to fade. And one day, they realize the silence is not random. It is the echo of their own words. Loss of respect is rarely dramatic. It is quiet. It is gradual. It is painful, because respect is not demanded. It is earned and easily destroyed. But silence is not just punishment. It is feedback. It shows them how their words made others feel. It reveals that honesty without empathy is cruelty. It exposes the cost of speaking without awareness. The solution begins with responsibility. They stop defending their words and start understanding their impact. Instead of saying, "That's just how I am," they ask, "How did my words affect others?" They learn to pause before speaking, to choose clarity over cruelty, to express truth with kindness, not arrogance. Small changes create powerful shifts. One sincere apology, one thoughtful conversation, one moment of humility. Hope appears when they realize that respect can be rebuilt, but only through consistent change. When they speak with intention, people begin to listen again. When they communicate with empathy, trust slowly returns. And one day, the silence breaks. Not because people forgot the past, but because they saw growth. Because in the end, careless words create distance, but conscious words create connection. And when they learn to speak with wisdom instead of impulse, their voice no longer pushes people away. It brings them closer. 8. Repeating patterns. Unlearned lessons. Return is suffering. They thought it was just bad luck. Another broken relationship. Another failed plan. Another familiar disappointment. Different people. Different situations. But the same ending. In today's world, repeating patterns are everywhere. People change jobs, but not habits. They change partners, but not emotional wounds. They change environments, but not mindsets. The problem is painful, but simple. When lessons are ignored, life repeats them. Not to punish, but to teach. They blame others. They blame timing. They blame circumstances. But deep inside, a quiet truth whispers, "This feels familiar." Repeating patterns are mirrors. They reveal unresolved fears, unhealed trauma, unconscious choices. Without awareness, people relive the same story in different forms. They chase the same type of love. They sabotage the same opportunities. They avoid the same responsibilities. And each cycle hurts more than the last. But patterns are not curses. They are signals, signals that growth is waiting. The solution begins with honesty. Instead of asking, "Why does this always happen to me?" they ask, "What am I repeating?" They look inward instead of outward. They question their choices instead of blaming fate. They learn to pause before reacting. to choose differently where they once followed habit, to confront discomfort instead of escaping it. Small shifts create massive change. One boundary set, one truth accepted, one habit broken. Hope appears when they realize something powerful. Patterns continue only when they remain unconscious. The moment they become aware, the cycle begins to break. Slowly, their story changes. They attract healthier relationships. They make wiser decisions. They stop running from the same lessons. And one day, they look back and realize the suffering was never random. It was guidance. Because life does not repeat lessons to destroy them. It repeats them until they finally grow. And when they choose growth over repetition, suffering transforms into wisdom. 9. Public exposure. Hidden intentions surface when pride grows. At first, no one noticed. They looked confident, successful, in control. People admired their words, their achievements, their image. But behind the polished surface, there were intentions they never revealed. Motives masked by charm. Ambitions fueled by ego rather than purpose. In today's world, image is everything. People curate perfection online. They build brands before building character. They chase applause faster than truth. The problem is this: pride makes secrets louder. When ego grows, humility shrinks. When validation becomes addiction, authenticity disappears. And sooner or later, what was hidden begins to show. A careless post, a leaked message, a public mistake. Suddenly, the image cracks. Public exposure feels brutal. It feels humiliating. It feels unfair. But exposure is rarely random. It is the moment when reality catches up with performance. For many, this moment destroys reputation. For others, it destroys illusions. But exposure is not only punishment. It is revelation. It reveals who they truly are. It shows them the cost of living behind a mask. It forces them to confront the gap between image and identity. The solution begins with honesty. Instead of defending pride, they choose humility. Instead of hiding mistakes, they acknowledge them. Instead of protecting ego, they rebuild character. They learn that real respect is not earned by appearing perfect, but by being accountable. Small acts of truth create powerful change. One public admission, one sincere apology, one decision to live without deception. Hope appears when they realize something transformative. Exposure can destroy false identity, but it can also create real character. When they stop performing and start being authentic, people begin to trust again. Slowly, pride turns into purpose. Image turns into integrity. Shame turns into strength. And one day, they understand. It was not exposure that ruined them. It was exposure that saved them. Because when hidden intentions surface, they finally have a chance to become someone real. 10. Emotional numbness. Those who hurt others slowly lose the ability to feel. They didn't notice it at first. The small lies, the selfish words, the shortcuts in relationships. At the time, it felt harmless, convenient, necessary. In today's world, emotional numbness is everywhere. People swipe past empathy. Messages replace conversations. Convenience replaces connection. They justify their actions. It's business. It's nothing personal. Everyone does it. The problem is subtle but devastating. Each time they hurt someone, a piece of their own humanity fades. They stop caring as deeply. They stop trusting as fully. They stop feeling joy as completely. And eventually, they notice the emptiness. The warmth in laughter is muted. The excitement in achievement feels hollow. The satisfaction in love is distant. Pain isn't just inflicted outward, it reflects inward. But numbness is not permanent. It is a signal, a warning that they have strayed too far from empathy. The solution begins with awareness. They pause. They reflect. They ask, who am I hurting? Why do I act this way? They learn to apologize sincerely. They practice small acts of care. They slow down and reconnect with emotions they once ignored. One heartfelt conversation, one act of kindness, one decision to feel fully again. Hope appears when they realize something profound. Humanity isn't lost, it's dormant. With conscious effort, they can restore their ability to feel. They can rebuild relationships with honesty and care. They can reclaim joy, love, and empathy. And one day, they will notice. Hurting others no longer defines them. Feeling again strengthens them. And the life that once felt empty begins to feel real. Because the moment they reconnect with their emotions, they remember what it means to be alive and to be human. 11. Distrust. Manipulators are surrounded by suspicion. They once thought they were clever. They knew how to bend words, charm people, and get what they wanted. They could twist situations in their favor, keep secrets, and play games without consequence. In today's world, manipulation feels easy. Social media rewards influence. Workplaces reward cunning. Relationships reward strategy. They convince themselves, I'm just protecting myself. I'm just being smart. But the problem is invisible until it isn't. Manipulation breeds suspicion. People start noticing patterns. Questions arise. Friends hesitate. Partners doubt. Every action, once admired, is now analyzed. Every word, once trusted, is now questioned. They feel paranoid. They feel alone. The same tactics that once gave power now create isolation. The world they tried to control has grown distant and cold. Distrust is a mirror. It shows that short-term gain comes at the cost of long-term connection. It exposes the emptiness of relationships built on deception rather than trust. The solution begins with honesty. They pause. They reflect. They ask themselves, why do I manipulate? What am I afraid of? They start to choose transparency over control. They practice empathy over strategy. They build relationships with sincerity, not calculation. One conversation of truth, one act of fairness, one moment of vulnerability. Hope appears when they realize that trust can be rebuilt if they are willing to change. Slowly, suspicion fades. Connections deepen. Loyalty returns. And one day, they understand. Power without trust is fragile. But trust with integrity is unbreakable. Because the moment they stop manipulating, they stop being surrounded by suspicion and start being surrounded by people who believe in them. 12. Fear of loss. Those who take too much live in constant anxiety. They work harder than anyone else. They chase every opportunity. They grab everything within reach: money, attention, control, because they are afraid it might disappear. In today's world, this fear feels normal. Competition is everywhere. Social media shows abundance everywhere else. Success is measured by accumulation: more likes, more followers, more possessions. And they buy into it. The problem is subtle but relentless. The more they take, the less they feel secure. Every achievement comes with unease. Every relationship comes with suspicion. Every possession comes with fear of losing it. They lie awake at night, replaying scenarios. What if they fail? What if someone takes what is theirs? What if it's never enough? Anxiety becomes constant. Life feels like walking on a tightrope, always balancing, always fearing the fall. But fear of loss is not destiny. It is a signal that they are trying to fill emptiness with external things instead of inner strength, that they are chasing quantity over quality, that they are seeking control over what they cannot control. The solution begins with awareness. They pause. They ask themselves, what do I truly need? What can I let go of? They start practicing gratitude instead of greed. They invest in experiences, relationships, and values rather than just possessions. One conscious choice, one act of generosity, one moment of letting go. Hope appears when they realize something powerful. Nothing external can create lasting security. Only inner resilience can. The moment they release fear and attachment, anxiety fades. The world feels lighter. Life feels fuller. And one day, they understand. Taking everything never brought peace. But letting go and valuing what matters brings freedom. Because those who stop fearing loss finally learn to live. 13. Loneliness in crowds. Popularity without authenticity creates isolation. They thought being admired would make them feel alive. The likes, the comments, the invitations, everyone seemed to want a piece of them. The applause was constant. The attention felt addictive. In today's world, this is all too familiar. Social media shows faces full of smiles, yet few real connections. People are rewarded for being seen, not understood. They learn to perform, to curate, to be everything everyone wanted, but never truly themselves. The problem is subtle, but crushing. Surrounded by people, they feel unseen. In every conversation, there's a mask. In every laugh, there's calculation. Every connection is shallow, built on image, not substance. The more they perform, the more isolated they feel. Loneliness grows not because there's no one around, but because no one truly knows them. Yet this isolation is not permanent. It is a signal that authenticity has been abandoned. That connection requires more than applause. That fulfillment cannot be bought with likes or attention. The solution begins with courage. They pause. They ask themselves, who am I when no one is watching? They start removing masks. They share honestly. They seek people who value truth over image. One real conversation. One act of vulnerability. One decision to show themselves fully. Hope appears when they realize something powerful. Popularity fades, but authenticity attracts depth. Slowly, the crowd becomes smaller but richer. Laughter becomes genuine. Connection becomes meaningful. And one day, they understand, they were never truly alone. They were just hiding behind a performance. When they embrace authenticity, the crowd may shrink, but the loneliness disappears. Because true connection begins not with being seen, but with being real. 14. Powerlessness. Those who abuse power eventually lose control. They felt unstoppable once. They commanded attention at work. In their circle, online, they bent rules to suit themselves. They manipulated situations and people, thinking they were untouchable. In today's world, power is visible and seductive. Titles, followers, wealth, and influence can make them feel invincible. They justify their actions. I earned this. I can do what I want. The problem is inevitable. Abuse of power breeds instability. People notice. Allies turn away. Trust erodes. Support fades. The more they force control externally, the less control they have internally. Every attempt to dominate creates resistance. Every manipulation sows future chaos. Eventually, the illusion shatters. The world they tried to control slips from their hands. They feel exposed, frustrated, and powerless. But powerlessness is not permanent. It is a signal that true control begins within, not over others. That influence without integrity is fragile. That dominance without respect is temporary. The solution begins with reflection. They pause. They ask themselves, why do I need to control? What am I afraid of? They start acting with fairness instead of force. They lead with respect, not fear. They rebuild relationships on trust, not manipulation. One honest conversation, one transparent decision, one act of accountability. Hope appears when they realize something transformative. True power is not about taking, it is about guiding. It is influence rooted in respect, not fear. Slowly, control returns not as domination, but as calm authority. People follow because they trust, not because they are forced. And one day they understand. Abuse of power only brings chaos. Integrity of power brings freedom. Because when they lead with respect and self-control, they never feel powerless again. 15. Awakening through suffering. Pain becomes the teacher. When wisdom is ignored, they thought they could avoid it. The setbacks, the heartbreaks, the disappointments. In today's world, suffering often arrives quietly. A failed relationship, a lost job, a betrayal by someone they trusted. And they ask themselves, why me? Why now? The problem is deeper than circumstance. They ignore the lessons life offers. They repeat the same mistakes, chase the same illusions, and blame the world for outcomes they could have shaped. Pain hits harder because it's not just external, it's internal. It exposes where they have been careless, proud, or unaware. It shows that the comfort they chased, the shortcuts they took, and the wisdom they ignored all have consequences. Yet suffering is not a prison, it is a teacher. The solution begins with awareness. They pause. They reflect. They ask, what is this pain trying to show me? What have I ignored? They stop resisting the discomfort and start learning from it. Every mistake becomes insight. Every loss becomes guidance. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. One honest reflection, one choice to change, one lesson applied. Hope appears when they realize something profound. Pain is only unbearable if they resist it. If they face it, it becomes fuel. Slowly, suffering transforms into awakening. They stop repeating patterns that once hurt them. They act with clarity instead of impulse. They see life through wisdom, not just emotion. And one day they understand. Life did not break them, it taught them. And when wisdom is finally embraced, suffering becomes the path to strength, clarity, and freedom. Because the hardest lessons often create the strongest people.